Hannah Cole had learned long ago never to ask too many questions about the private referral calls that occasionally came through her hospital's discreet emergency network. As a former combat medic who had served 2 difficult tours overseas before transitioning into civilian emergency room nursing, she understood better than most that sometimes people needed medical help delivered quietly, without the complications of official paperwork or curious questions. The call had come in just after midnight, a hurried, tense voice on the other end of her phone, providing an address in an unfamiliar part of the city and promising considerable payment for immediate, discreet assistance. Anna had grabbed her medical bag without significant hesitation, her considerable experience treating difficult, unofficial cases throughout her career, having taught her that genuine medical need rarely respected convenient boundaries or proper procedure. She arrived at the address within 20 minutes, a nondescript warehouse building on the city's industrial outskirts that gave absolutely no indication of the chaos waiting inside. The building's side door stood slightly ajar, and Hannah, trusting the urgent instructions she'd received, pushed through into a scene that immediately shattered her assumption of a simple, quiet house call. The warehouse's interior had been converted into something resembling a private residence. Comfortable furniture and warm lighting, creating an unexpected domestic atmosphere entirely at odds with the chaos currently unfolding within it. Several men in dark, expensive suits moved urgently around a wounded figure lying on the floor near an overturned table, blood pooling steadily beneath him despite their obvious, desperate attempts at applying pressure to his injuries. "Who are you?" one man demanded sharply, his hand immediately moving toward a weapon holstered beneath his jacket as he registered Hannah's unexpected, unfamiliar presence. "I received a call for medical assistance," Hannah said, her voice remarkably steady despite the obvious danger and chaos surrounding her. Years of combat experience had taught her that panic served no purpose whatsoever in genuine emergency situations. Regardless of how unusual or frightening the surrounding circumstances proved, another man, older and clearly carrying more authority within this tense group, studied her carefully, genuine desperation evident beneath his attempted composure. "You're the nurse from the private network?" "I am," Hannah confirmed, already moving instinctively toward the wounded man despite the obvious danger surrounding this unfamiliar, tense situation. "How long has he been bleeding like this?" "Nearly 15 minutes, the older man said, genuine urgency evident in his tense voice. "We couldn't reach our usual doctor. He's unavailable tonight." Hannah knelt quickly beside the wounded man, her trained eyes immediately assessing his considerable injuries with practiced, efficient focus. A gunshot wound had torn through his lower abdomen, blood loss already considerable given the pooling evident beneath him. His breathing shallow and increasingly labored as his body struggled against the trauma. "I need considerably more light. Clean towels and boiling water immediately," Hannah instructed sharply, her voice carrying the same commanding authority she'd developed treating wounded soldiers in considerably more chaotic circumstances than this tense warehouse currently presented. The surrounding men, despite their obvious uncertainty about trusting this unfamiliar stranger with their wounded companion's life, recognized genuine competence in her immediate, decisive actions. Several rushed to properly fulfill her urgent requests, while others continued watching her with wary, suspicious attention. Hannah worked with practiced, focused efficiency, her hands moving with steady confidence despite the tense, dangerous atmosphere surrounding her. She had treated considerably worse injuries under infinitely more chaotic circumstances during her military service. Artillery fire and desperate, urgent evacuations having taught her exactly how to maintain calm, effective focus regardless of surrounding chaos. "The bullet's still inside," she said, examining the wound carefully as she worked to control the considerable bleeding. "He needs surgery properly performed in a genuine medical facility. I can stabilize him temporarily, but this injury requires considerably more than field treatment can properly address." "That's not possible," the older man said sharply, genuine tension evident in his firm refusal. No hospitals, no official records. Hannah studied him carefully, genuine understanding building despite her obvious concern regarding this dangerous restriction. She had encountered similar circumstances before, situations where official medical protocol simply wasn't available given the particular, complicated circumstances surrounding certain patients. "Then I'll do everything possible here," she said firmly, "though I need you to understand clearly." His chances improved considerably with proper facility access, as Hannah continued working urgently to stabilize the wounded man, applying pressure carefully while preparing to properly extract the bullet, given the unavailability of proper hospital transport. The warehouse's main door suddenly burst open with considerable, dramatic force. Every man in the room froze immediately, genuine tension flooding through the space as a tall, imposing figure entered with unhurried, dangerous authority. He was perhaps 40 years old, dark hair combed precisely back, his expensive suit carrying not a single wrinkle, despite what had obviously been a considerably difficult evening given the surrounding chaos. Dominic Cassano surveyed the scene with sharp, assessing eyes, his gaze immediately locking onto the wounded man on the floor before shifting toward Hannah. Genuine surprise evident beneath his otherwise controlled expression at discovering an unfamiliar stranger working urgently over his clearly important associate. "Who is this?" Dominic asked, his voice carrying quiet, dangerous authority that immediately silenced the room's remaining tension into complete, focused attention. "The nurse from the private network." "Sir," the older man explained quickly, genuine deference evident in his careful response. "We couldn't reach Dr. Alvarez." Dominic's sharp eyes studied Hannah carefully, genuine assessment evident in his careful, measured attention. "How is Marco's condition?" he asked directly, addressing her without preamble, despite the considerable tension filling the room. Hannah met his intense gaze steadily, refusing to allow the obvious danger and authority radiating from this newly arrived, imposing man to disrupt her professional focus. "Critical but stable for now," she said honestly. "He needs proper surgical intervention within the next hour, or his chances diminish considerably." Dominic's jaw tightened visibly at this assessment, genuine concern evident beneath his controlled exterior, despite his obvious effort at maintaining composed authority. "Can you properly provide that intervention here?" "I can attempt bullet extraction," Hannah said carefully, "though I want you to understand clearly this isn't a properly equipped surgical environment. The risks increase considerably compared to genuine hospital treatment. Do whatever is necessary," Dominic said firmly, genuine urgency evident despite his controlled tone. "I trust your judgment given the circumstances currently available to us." As Hannah returned her focus toward the critical work of properly stabilizing Marco, genuine awareness building about exactly how dangerous and unusual her current circumstances had become. Dominic remained close, watching her work with unusual, intense focus that suggested considerably more personal investment than simple concern for a valuable associate's welfare. The extraction proved genuinely difficult, Hannah's steady hands working with practiced precision despite the considerable pressure surrounding this improvised, dangerous procedure. After nearly 40 tense minutes, she finally successfully removed the bullet, properly cleaning and closing the wound with careful, methodical attention despite her obvious exhaustion. "He should survive," Hannah said finally, genuine relief evident beneath her professional composure as she completed her careful work. "Though he'll need considerable monitoring throughout the following days to ensure infection doesn't develop." Given these less-than-ideal treatment conditions, genuine relief flooded visibly through the tense room. Several men, releasing breath they'd apparently been holding throughout this dangerous, uncertain procedure. Dominic studied Hannah carefully, genuine gratitude evident beneath his controlled expression. "You saved his life," he said quietly, genuine sincerity evident in his careful words. "I simply did my job," Hannah replied, exhaustion evident in her tired voice, despite her attempted professional composure. As the immediate crisis gradually settled, genuine tension remained evident throughout the room regarding exactly what should properly happen now that an outside witness had seen considerably more than any unaffiliated civilian should reasonably know about their dangerous, secretive organization. One of the younger men shifted uncomfortably, genuine unease evident as he glanced toward Dominic. "So she's seen everything. What do we—" Dominic's sharp gaze cut immediately toward him, silencing the unfinished question instantly. He studied Hannah carefully for a long, considering moment, genuine calculation evident behind his controlled, assessing expression as the entire room waited in tense, uncertain silence for his decision regarding this unexpected, complicated situation. Finally, Dominic spoke, his voice carrying quiet, absolute authority that immediately froze every person in the room into complete, stunned attention. "Protect her." The two simple words hung heavily in the tense silence that followed, every man present understanding immediately the profound significance behind this unexpected, unprecedented command. Hannah looked up sharply, genuine confusion evident in her tired expression as she processed exactly what those two words might properly mean for her uncertain, dangerous future. Rosa stood quietly in the grand entrance hall, genuine conflict evident in her thoughtful expression as she processed Antonio's heartfelt, vulnerable explanation. Despite her justified hurt at his earlier explosive reaction, genuine compassion was building steadily as she recognized the authentic pain underlying his uncharacteristic outburst. "Tell me about her," Rosa said finally, genuine gentleness evident in her careful request. "Your mother, I mean. If you're genuinely willing to share." Antonio studied her carefully, genuine surprise evident at her thoughtful willingness to properly understand rather than simply departing given his unfair treatment. "Perhaps we should sit down properly," he suggested, gesturing toward the estate's quiet sitting room. "This isn't a conversation suited for a rushed hallway exchange." Rosa hesitated only briefly before nodding, setting her packed suitcase down carefully as she followed him toward the comfortable sitting room. Genuine curiosity building, despite her lingering hurt regarding his earlier harsh dismissal. Once properly settled, Antonio began speaking slowly, genuine vulnerability evident in his careful, considered words. "My mother, Maria, raised me largely alone throughout my childhood," he explained. "My father remained considerably absorbed in building our family's business interests, leaving her responsible for most genuine parenting despite our household's considerable wealth and staff." "That sounds genuinely lonely," Rosa observed gently. "Despite obvious material comfort, it was, in many ways," Antonio confirmed. "Though my mother made genuine effort ensuring I never felt entirely abandoned despite my father's frequent absence. Cooking together became our special tradition, something entirely separate from the complicated business affairs that otherwise dominated our household. The braised lamb recipe," Rosa said softly, genuine understanding building. "Her signature dish," Antonio confirmed, genuine emotion evident beneath his careful composure. "She prepared it for every significant occasion, throughout my childhood, birthdays, holidays, difficult days when I genuinely needed comfort beyond simple words alone." "What happened to her?" Rosa asked gently, genuine sympathy evident in her careful question. "Sudden illness," Antonio said, genuine pain evident in his controlled voice. "Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed far too late for any meaningful treatment, despite considerable resources dedicated toward finding proper medical solutions. She passed away just 3 months after her initial diagnosis, leaving me genuinely unprepared for such devastating, sudden loss." Genuine tears building in her own eyes at this heartbreaking explanation. Rosa reached instinctively for his hand, genuine compassion overriding her earlier justified hurt. "I'm so genuinely sorry, Antonio. That's an incredibly difficult loss to properly process, particularly given how close your relationship apparently remained throughout your life. I haven't properly processed it." If I'm entirely honest, Antonio admitted, genuine vulnerability evident in his careful words. I've spent 8 years avoiding anything that might trigger genuine grief, throwing myself entirely into managing our family's business affairs, rather than properly confronting this considerable, unresolved pain. That explains your reaction tonight, Rosa said softly, genuine understanding building steadily, though I confess it still hurt considerably. Being dismissed so suddenly for simply attempting something genuinely thoughtful. I know, Antonio said sincerely, genuine remorse evident in his careful response. And I'm genuinely deeply sorry for reacting so unfairly toward your kind, well-intentioned gesture. You deserved considerably better treatment than what I offered tonight. Rosa studied him carefully, genuine complexity evident in her thoughtful expression as she processed both her justified hurt and genuine sympathy for his obvious, authentic pain. I need you to understand something clearly, she said firmly. I genuinely care about this position, about the work I've built here throughout this past year. But I won't continue if similar reactions might occur whenever unexpected emotional triggers arise. That's entirely fair, Antonio acknowledged seriously. I recognize I need to properly address this unprocessed grief, rather than allowing it to continue affecting my judgment and treatment of people who genuinely deserve better consideration. Perhaps, Rosa suggested carefully, genuine thoughtfulness evident in her gentle proposal, properly honoring your mother's memory doesn't require complete avoidance. Perhaps genuine healing might actually involve gradually reconnecting with meaningful traditions, rather than continuing to avoid them entirely. Antonio considered this thoughtful suggestion seriously, genuine consideration evident in his careful expression. You believe I should properly confront this grief rather than continuing to avoid it? I believe avoidance rarely provides genuine healing, Rosa said honestly. Though I recognize this represents deeply personal decision, entirely within your own judgment, not something I should presume to properly direct. Genuine appreciation evident in his thoughtful expression, Antonio studied Rosa carefully. Your perspective carries considerable wisdom, he said sincerely. Perhaps you're genuinely right that continued avoidance hasn't properly served my genuine healing throughout these past 8 years. Would you be willing to try again? Rosa asked carefully, genuine hope evident beneath her careful question. The dish, I mean. Perhaps under considerably different circumstances than tonight's unexpected surprise. Antonio considered this genuine offer seriously, genuine vulnerability evident in his careful expression. I believe I would genuinely like that, he said finally, though perhaps we might prepare it together, rather than simply presenting it as unexpected surprise. Sharing that experience might properly honor her memory considerably more meaningfully than simply consuming the finished dish alone. Genuine warmth flooded through Rosa's expression at this thoughtful, meaningful suggestion. I genuinely like that very much, she said sincerely, as their difficult, emotional conversation gradually concluded. Both processing the genuine vulnerability shared throughout this unexpected exchange, Antonio studied Rosa carefully, genuine gratitude evident beneath his still obvious emotional exhaustion. Thank you, he said sincerely, for your patience and understanding despite my earlier unfair treatment. You deserved considerably better than my explosive, thoughtless reaction. Thank you for trusting me with something so genuinely personal, Rosa replied softly, genuine warmth evident in her careful response. I'm genuinely grateful you found the courage to properly explain, rather than simply allowing me to leave without understanding. Over the following days, Antonio made genuine, consistent effort to properly demonstrate his sincere regret regarding his earlier unfair treatment, offering Rosa considerable additional compensation, despite her insistence that such generous gesture wasn't genuinely necessary, given his heartfelt apology. Want you to understand clearly how genuinely I value your continued presence here, Antonio explained. When Rosa attempted declining his generous additional compensation, This isn't simply about properly addressing my earlier unfair treatment. I genuinely want to demonstrate how considerably I appreciate your talent, your thoughtfulness, and your patience throughout this difficult situation. Rosa found herself genuinely touched by his sincere, consistent effort toward proper reconciliation. Gradual trust rebuilding steadily between them, despite the painful, difficult beginning to this particular chapter within their working relationship. Neither of them could have anticipated, however, exactly how significantly this vulnerable, emotional exchange would eventually transform their entire relationship, gradually building toward genuine connection considerably deeper than either had initially anticipated when Rosa first accepted her position within Antonio's complicated, dangerous household 1 year earlier. True to their agreement, Antonio and Rosa spent the following Saturday afternoon together in the kitchen, carefully preparing his mother's braised lamb recipe side by side, rather than Rosa simply presenting it as a finished surprise. Antonio guided her through details his mother had once taught him, small techniques and preferences that transformed the dish from simple recipe into genuine, meaningful tribute. She always insisted on fresh rosemary, never dried, Antonio said, genuine warmth evident in his voice as he carefully selected herbs from the kitchen's considerable collection. She claimed dried rosemary lacked the genuine, authentic flavor her grandmother had always used in Sicily. Your grandmother taught her this recipe? Rosa asked, genuine interest evident in her careful question. Precisely, Antonio confirmed, something genuinely peaceful evident in his expression as he shared these precious memories. It's been passed through our family for 3 generations now. My mother always hoped I might eventually share it with my own children someday. Rosa felt genuine warmth at this meaningful admission, appreciating the trust Antonio was demonstrating by sharing such personal, precious family history. It's a beautiful tradition, she said sincerely. Thank you for trusting me enough to properly learn it alongside you. As they continued cooking together throughout the afternoon, genuine, comfortable connection building steadily between them, Antonio found himself sharing increasingly personal memories about his mother. Stories he hadn't properly discussed with anyone throughout the 8 years since her passing. She used to sing while cooking, he said, genuine fondness evident in his soft smile. Old Italian songs her own mother had taught her. I confess I haven't properly listened to that particular music since her funeral. Would you like to? Rosa asked gently, genuine perceptiveness evident in her careful question. Perhaps it might feel meaningful, incorporating that memory into today's experience as well. Antonio considered this thoughtful suggestion seriously before nodding slowly. Perhaps, he said, genuine vulnerability evident in his careful admission. Though I confess I'm uncertain exactly how I might properly react. We could try, Rosa offered gently. There's no genuine pressure regarding how you respond. Grief doesn't follow predictable patterns, particularly regarding memories this precious and personal. Antonio located the appropriate music through his phone. Genuine emotion, building as familiar melodies filled the kitchen for the first time in considerable years. Tears formed in his eyes as memories flooded through his consciousness. Though this time, rather than explosive, painful reaction, genuine, peaceful nostalgia gradually settled through his careful, considered response. This feels different than I expected, he admitted quietly. Genuine surprise evident in his thoughtful expression. Painful, certainly, but also somehow comforting rather than simply devastating. That's genuine healing, Rosa observed gently, allowing yourself to properly experience both the pain and the comfort simultaneously, rather than avoiding one to escape the other. As the dish finally finished cooking, filling the kitchen with warm, familiar aromas that clearly evoked considerable meaningful memory for Antonio, they sat together at the kitchen's small, informal table rather than his usual formal dining room, sharing this meaningful meal in considerably more intimate, comfortable circumstances than their earlier painful encounter. Thank you, Antonio said sincerely. genuine emotion evident in his careful words as they finished their meal together. For helping me properly experience this memory again, rather than continuing to avoid it entirely. Thank you for trusting me enough to share something so genuinely meaningful, Rosa replied warmly. Genuine connection evident in her sincere response. Over the following weeks, their relationship continued deepening steadily beyond simple professional necessity. Genuine friendship building through consistent, thoughtful interaction. Antonio began seeking Rosa's company more regularly, not simply for meal preparation, but genuine conversation and connection that extended considerably beyond their original employer-employee arrangement. You've changed considerably these past weeks, Antonio's longtime associate, Marco, observed carefully during one of their regular business meetings. More relaxed, considerably less guarded than I've witnessed since your mother's passing. Antonio considered this observation thoughtfully before responding honestly. Rosa has helped me properly process considerable grief I've avoided for years, he admitted. Her patience and genuine understanding have shown me healing I hadn't properly believed myself capable of experiencing. Is this developing into something beyond simple professional gratitude? Marco asked carefully, genuine perceptiveness evident in his thoughtful question. Antonio hesitated before answering, genuine consideration evident in his careful response. Perhaps, he admitted finally, though I confess, considerable complications exist given both our professional arrangement and the dangerous nature of my world. Those complications needn't necessarily prevent genuine happiness. Marco observed gently, should you genuinely believe such connection worth properly pursuing, despite obvious difficulty? As Antonio considered his associate's thoughtful observation seriously, his growing feelings for Rosa continued developing steadily. Genuine attraction building alongside their deepening friendship, despite his careful, deliberate efforts at maintaining appropriate professional boundaries, given their considerable difference in circumstances. Rosa, for her part, found herself experiencing similar, unexpected feelings throughout these weeks of deepening connection. Genuine confusion building about properly navigating attraction toward her employer. Despite the obvious complications such feelings inevitably created, you seem distracted lately, her close friend Elena observed during their regular coffee meeting. Genuine curiosity evident in her thoughtful expression. I think I'm developing feelings for Antonio, Rosa admitted honestly. Genuine uncertainty evident in her careful confession. Beyond simple professional respect, I mean. Elena's eyebrows rose considerably at this unexpected revelation. Your employer, the Mafia Boss? I know how that sounds, Rosa said, genuine embarrassment evident in her tone. Though these past weeks, seeing his genuine vulnerability, his authentic character beneath his dangerous reputation, I've found myself genuinely drawn toward him in ways I hadn't properly anticipated. What do you intend to do about these feelings? Elena asked carefully. I honestly don't know, Rosa admitted. Part of me believes pursuing such connection represents genuine foolishness given our circumstances. Yet another part genuinely wonders whether avoiding authentic, feeling simply out of practical caution represents its own kind of mistake, as both Antonio and Rosa continued, privately processing these unexpected, complicated feelings, neither yet aware of the other's similar internal struggle. Their relationship continued deepening through genuine daily interaction, gradually building toward inevitable confrontation with these unspoken, growing feelings neither had properly anticipated when Rosa first accepted her position within his household 1 year earlier. Meanwhile, entirely unknown to either of them, their growing closeness had already attracted unwanted attention from unexpected sources, dangerous eyes watching this developing connection with calculating, opportunistic interest that would soon threaten everything they were carefully building together. 3 weeks after their meaningful afternoon preparing Maria's recipe together, Antonio finally found himself unable to continue denying the genuine feelings that had steadily developed toward Rosa. He found her in the kitchen one evening, preparing a simple dinner despite the late hour. Genuine warmth evident in his expression as he watched her work with practiced, comfortable efficiency. "You're working rather late tonight," he observed, settling onto one of the kitchen's comfortable stools. "I wanted to try a new recipe I discovered," Rosa explained, genuine enthusiasm evident in her warm smile. "A considerably complicated Moroccan dish requiring careful, extended preparation." Antonio studied her carefully, genuine tenderness evident in his thoughtful expression. "You genuinely love this work," he observed, "not simply as employment, but authentic passion." "I do," Rosa confirmed, genuine warmth evident in her response. "Cooking has always felt like my genuine calling, creating something meaningful that brings people genuine comfort and joy. You've certainly accomplished that considerably within this household," Antonio said sincerely, genuine gratitude evident in his careful words. Their conversation continued comfortably as Rosa finished preparing her experimental dish. Genuine ease building between them, despite the underlying tension both had been carefully avoiding, acknowledging throughout recent weeks. "Rosa," Antonio said finally, genuine seriousness evident in his careful tone. "I need to properly discuss something significant with you." Rosa paused her work, genuine curiosity building at his obvious seriousness. "What is it?" Antonio took a steadying breath before continuing, genuine vulnerability evident beneath his careful composure. "These past weeks, since our conversation regarding my mother, I found myself experiencing feelings toward you that extend considerably beyond simple professional appreciation or friendship." Genuine surprise flooded through Rosa's expression, though something warm and hopeful was evident beneath her obvious shock. "What kind of feelings, Antonio?" "Genuine romantic attraction," Antonio said honestly, genuine sincerity evident in his careful admission. "I understand this creates considerable complication given our professional arrangement, and I would completely understand if you preferred I keep such feelings entirely private. But I felt compelled toward honesty, particularly given how genuinely significant you've become within my daily existence." Rosa set down her cooking utensils carefully, genuine emotion building as she processed this heartfelt confession. "I've experienced similar feelings," she admitted softly, genuine warmth evident in her careful words. "Though I've struggled considerably with whether pursuing such connection represents wisdom, given both our circumstances and your dangerous world." "I understand that legitimate concern completely," Antonio said sincerely. "I won't pretend my world doesn't carry considerable danger and complication, but I find myself genuinely unwilling to simply ignore authentic feeling out of practical caution alone." Genuine hope building steadily within her chest, Rosa studied him carefully. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'd like the opportunity to properly court you," Antonio said, genuine sincerity evident in his careful words. "Not simply as employer and employee navigating complicated feelings, but as two people genuinely choosing to explore authentic connection despite obvious complications." Rosa felt genuine happiness building at this heartfelt proposal. "I'd like that very much," she said sincerely, genuine warmth evident in her radiant smile. Something profoundly relieved and joyful passed across Antonio's expression at her positive response. "Perhaps we might begin properly this weekend," he suggested. "A genuine dinner together, away from the estate's usual business obligations." "I'd genuinely enjoy that," Rosa confirmed, genuine happiness evident throughout her warm expression. Over the following weeks, Antonio and Rosa began carefully exploring their genuine romantic connection, their relationship deepening steadily through thoughtful dates and increasingly personal conversation. Antonio proved considerably attentive throughout their developing courtship, genuine consideration evident in every carefully planned gesture and conversation. "I've never experienced anyone quite like you," Antonio admitted during one particularly meaningful evening together. Your genuine warmth, your authentic kindness, despite everything you've witnessed regarding my dangerous world. These qualities have shown me happiness I hadn't properly believed myself capable of experiencing since my mother's passing. You've shown me something equally meaningful, Rosa replied softly, genuine sincerity evident in her careful words, genuine vulnerability beneath your controlled, dangerous reputation. I've come to genuinely respect and care for the authentic man beneath that careful exterior. As their relationship continued deepening into genuine, mutual affection, neither remained fully aware of the dangerous attention their growing connection had already attracted from unexpected, calculating sources. Giovanni Bellini, leader of a rival criminal organization that had long sought opportunities to challenge Antonio's considerable territorial influence, had been carefully monitoring recent developments within Antonio's household through a paid informant among his household staff. Marchetti has developed genuine attachment toward his personal chef. Giovanni's informant reported during a private meeting. Regular dates, considerable emotional investment evident throughout his recent behavior. Giovanni considered this valuable information carefully, genuine calculation building behind his sharp, assessing expression. Antonio Marchetti has always maintained careful, impenetrable emotional control throughout his considerable career, he said thoughtfully. If he's genuinely developed vulnerability through this relationship, she represents exactly the leverage necessary to finally challenge his previously unquestionable territorial dominance. What specifically are you planning? His lieutenant asked carefully. Patience, for now, Giovanni said, genuine calculated restraint evident in his careful planning. I want comprehensive understanding of her daily routine, her vulnerabilities, before we consider proper strategic action. Rushing this valuable opportunity risks squandering exactly the kind of significant leverage I've searched for regarding Antonio's previously untouchable position. Back within Antonio's estate, entirely unaware of Giovanni's dangerous calculating interest, Antonio and Rosa continued building their genuine, meaningful connection, both increasingly confident about pursuing authentic happiness despite whatever complications their unconventional relationship might eventually create. I want you to properly meet my extended family, Antonio said one evening, genuine seriousness evident in his careful request. My aunt hosts a considerable family gathering next month. I genuinely value your presence there. If you're willing. Rosa felt genuine warmth at this meaningful invitation, understanding clearly the significance of introducing her to his family, given his typically guarded, private nature. I'd be honored, she said sincerely, as their relationship continued deepening steadily toward this significant milestone. Neither Antonio nor Rosa could anticipate exactly how soon Giovanni's patient, calculating investigation would transform from careful observation into direct, dangerous action against their carefully building happiness together. Giovanni Bellini's patient investigation into Rosa's daily routine had progressed considerably over the following weeks, his careful surveillance confirming exactly the kind of valuable, exploitable information necessary to properly execute his dangerous, calculated plan against Antonio's territorial dominance. She maintains a predictable weekly schedule, his lead investigator reported during a private strategic meeting. Regular grocery shopping at the same market every Tuesday morning, weekly visits to her sister's apartment on Thursday evenings, minimal security presence, given Marchetti's apparent belief their relationship remains sufficiently private. Giovanni considered this valuable intelligence carefully, genuine satisfaction evident in his calculating expression. This provides exactly the opportunity necessary for properly executing our strategy, he said thoughtfully. A carefully orchestrated approach during one of these predictable, minimally protected moments. What specifically are you planning? His lieutenant asked carefully. A proper demonstration, Giovanni said coldly, genuine dangerous calculation evident in his careful planning. something that will clearly reveal exactly how vulnerable Marchetti has become through this unexpected romantic attachment, while simultaneously providing considerable leverage for future negotiations regarding territorial boundaries. The following Thursday evening, as Rosa walked toward her sister's apartment for their regular weekly visit, unaware of the careful surveillance that had been tracking her routine for considerable weeks, two of Giovanni's men approached with calculated, threatening purpose. "Miss Delgado," one man said, his tone carrying deceptive politeness that immediately triggered Rosa's instinctive unease. "We need a brief word regarding your relationship with Antonio Marchetti." Rosa felt genuine alarm building rapidly, her instincts recognizing immediate danger despite her attempts at maintaining outward composure. "I don't know what you're referring to," she said carefully, attempting to continue walking past them. The second man moved quickly, blocking her path with practiced, threatening efficiency. "I'd suggest reconsidering that dismissive response," he said coldly. "Mr. Bellini has considerable interest in properly understanding exactly how significant you've become to Marchetti." Genuine terror building despite her attempt at composure, Rosa recognized she had no realistic means of escape, given these men's obvious coordination and threatening intent. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, genuine fear evident beneath her attempted courage. "Simply your cooperation," the first man said smoothly. "Come with us quietly, and perhaps this unpleasant situation can conclude without unnecessary complication." Despite her genuine fear, Rosa attempted desperate resistance, though the combined strength of these two men quickly overwhelmed her efforts. Within minutes, she found herself forced into a waiting vehicle, genuine panic building as they departed rapidly through the city's darkening streets. Meanwhile, Antonio, having arranged to collect Rosa from her sister's apartment that same evening, as had become their comfortable, established routine, arrived only to discover genuine alarm from her sister. "And Carmen, she never arrived," Carmen reported, genuine worry evident in her troubled expression. "She should have been here nearly an hour ago," genuine dread flooding through his chest. Antonio immediately contacted his security team, urgent coordination beginning as they worked to properly trace Rosa's likely route and identify exactly what might have prevented her expected arrival. "We found witnesses who observed a struggle near the market on 5th Street. Marco reported urgently within the hour, genuine alarm evident in his controlled voice. "Description matches two men forcing a woman into a black sedan." Genuine fury building beneath his controlled exterior, Antonio processed this devastating confirmation of his worst fears. "Giovanni," he said grimly, understanding immediately who possessed both motivation and resources for exactly this kind of calculated, dangerous action. "How do you want to proceed?" Marco asked carefully. "Mobilize everyone immediately," Antonio commanded firmly, genuine determination evident despite his obvious fear for Rosa's safety. "I want every resource dedicated toward locating her, and I want Giovanni to understand precisely what consequences await him for threatening someone I love." As Antonio's organization scrambled to gather intelligence regarding Rosa's location, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number, genuine dread building as he answered immediately. "Antonio Marchetti," Giovanni's voice said calmly, genuine satisfaction evident beneath his controlled tone. "I trust you've noticed your chef's unexpected absence tonight. Where is she?" Antonio demanded, his voice carrying deadly, controlled fury despite his genuine terror. "Safe for now," Giovanni said, "though her continued safety depends entirely on your willingness to properly negotiate regarding certain territorial disputes that have remained unresolved between our organizations." Antonio's jaw tightened with barely controlled anger. "If you harm her in any way, I have no interest in unnecessary violence," Giovanni interrupted smoothly. "Simply proper negotiation, Antonio. Surrender your considerable interests in the northern shipping district, and your beloved chef returns to you completely unharmed." Genuine terror for Rosa's safety, warring against his understanding that surrendering territory represented significant Potentially catastrophic weakness, Antonio felt himself facing an agonizing, impossible decision. "I need proof she remains genuinely unharmed," he said firmly, buying crucial time to properly organize his response. "Reasonable enough," Giovanni said, genuine calculation evident in his controlled tone. "You'll receive proper confirmation within the hour. I trust you'll use that time wisely, considering exactly how much her safety genuinely matters to you." As the call ended abruptly, Antonio stood frozen for several long moments, processing this devastating ultimatum. Genuine terror for Rosa's safety, warring against his understanding of the catastrophic precedent surrendering territory might establish for his organization's continued security. "What are your orders?" "Sir?" Marco asked carefully, genuine concern evident in his expression. "I need to know exactly where they're holding her," Antonio said firmly, "before I decide how properly to respond to this ultimatum. I won't simply surrender without understanding our actual options." Back within Giovanni's secure facility, Rosa sat bound to a chair, genuine fear evident despite her attempts at maintaining composure. Giovanni entered the room directly, his expression carrying calculated, a cold assessment as he studied her carefully. "You're the woman who's apparently captured Antonio Marchetti's guarded heart," he observed, genuine curiosity evident beneath his dangerous demeanor. "What do you want from me?" Rosa asked, genuine fear evident in her trembling voice, despite her attempt at maintaining courage. "Simply leverage," Giovanni said simply. "Antonio has spent years maintaining careful emotional distance, precisely to avoid exactly this kind of exploitable vulnerability. Your presence in his life has finally provided exactly the opportunity I've been searching for. He won't simply surrender to your demands," Rosa said, genuine conviction evident despite her fear. "Antonio is considerably stronger than you're apparently giving him credit for." Giovanni's expression carried genuine cold amusement at her defiant response. "We'll see precisely how strong his resolve remains once he properly understands what's genuinely at stake regarding your continued safety." As Giovanni departed, leaving Rosa alone with her mounting fear, she found herself thinking not of her own danger, but genuine worry about what impossible choice Antonio now faced because of his love for her. Marco arrived within the hour with breakthrough intelligence Antonio had been desperately awaiting. "We've located the facility, sir," he reported urgently. "An industrial complex on the eastern waterfront. Moderate security presence based on our surveillance. How many men are we dealing with?" Antonio asked sharply, genuine focused intensity evident despite his lingering terror for Rosa's safety. "Approximately 12. Based on vehicle count and observed movement patterns," Marco confirmed. "Giovanni himself appears to be present, along with several senior lieutenants." Antonio considered this information carefully, genuine calculation building beneath his controlled exterior. "I want everyone we can properly mobilize," he said firmly. "This ends tonight, one way or another." As Antonio's forces prepared for the dangerous rescue operation, a courier arrived with a small package Giovanni had promised. Genuine dread building as Antonio opened it carefully to find a photograph of Rosa, clearly frightened but visibly unharmed, bound to a chair within an unfamiliar room. "At least we have confirmation she remains alive," Marco observed grimly, "though this doesn't properly address our decision regarding his territorial demands." "I have no intention of surrendering anything," Antonio said firmly, genuine determination evident in his controlled tone. "We're taking her back, and Giovanni will face proper consequences for this dangerous, unacceptable provocation." Antonio's convoy departed within the hour, moving through the city's darkened streets with disciplined, coordinated precision toward the waterfront facility where Rosa remained, held captive. Genuine fear and determination warred within his chest throughout the tense journey. Memories of Rosa's genuine warmth and kindness fueling his absolute resolve to ensure her safe return. Inside the facility, Rosa remained bound to her chair, genuine exhaustion evident, despite her continued attempts at maintaining composure. Giovanni entered periodically, his calculated patience evident as he awaited Antonio's response to his earlier ultimatum. "Your Antonio seems to be taking considerable time deciding," Giovanni observed during one such visit. Genuine calculated amusement evident in his tone. "Perhaps his affection for you isn't quite as genuine as you'd apparently believed." "You're wrong," Rosa said firmly, genuine conviction evident despite her obvious fear and exhaustion. "Antonio simply isn't the kind of man who makes reckless decisions without proper consideration. That doesn't mean his love for me is anything less than completely genuine." Before Giovanni could respond further, one of his men rushed into the room, genuine alarm evident in his urgent expression. "Sir, we have a problem. Multiple vehicles approaching from the western perimeter, moving with clearly coordinated tactical precision." Giovanni's expression hardened immediately with genuine calculated concern. "Marchetti's finally decided to act rather than simply negotiate," he observed grimly. "Prepare our defenses immediately." The confrontation that followed erupted with intense, chaotic urgency, Antonio's forces moving with disciplined, coordinated efficiency despite the genuine danger surrounding their rescue operation. Antonio himself moved through the facility's chaotic confusion with focused, desperate determination, his mind fixed entirely on locating Rosa safely amid the dangerous confrontation. "Where is she?" Antonio demanded sharply, confronting one of Giovanni's men directly, his controlled fury evident despite the chaotic gunfire echoing throughout the facility's confined space. The man, recognizing the genuine danger of continued resistance given Antonio's clearly superior numbers, gestured reluctantly toward a side room. "There, but Giovanni's still with her." Antonio moved immediately toward the indicated location, genuine terror and determination driving his urgent steps despite the ongoing chaos surrounding him. He burst through the door to find Giovanni standing beside Rosa's chair, a weapon held with calculated, dangerous precision. "Antonio," Giovanni said calmly, though genuine tension was evident beneath his controlled demeanor, given the confrontation's clearly deteriorating circumstances. "I see you've decided against proper negotiation." "Let her go, Giovanni," Antonio said firmly, his voice carrying dangerous, controlled authority despite his genuine fear for Rosa's safety. "This ends now." "I don't think you're in a position to make demands," Giovanni said, though his voice carried less confidence than his earlier calculated composure had suggested, clearly recognizing his rapidly deteriorating tactical position. Rosa, despite her obvious exhaustion and fear, met Antonio's eyes directly, genuine trust and love evident in her steady gaze, despite the dangerous circumstances surrounding them. "I knew you would come," she said softly, genuine conviction evident in her trembling voice. Something fierce and protective moved through Antonio's chest at her genuine, unwavering trust. "Always," he said firmly, before his attention snapped back sharply toward Giovanni. "Release her immediately, or face considerably worse consequences than simple territorial dispute." Giovanni hesitated, genuine calculation evident as he processed his rapidly deteriorating circumstances. Outside the room, the sound of continued confrontation confirmed his forces were being decisively overwhelmed by Antonio's superior numbers and preparation. "This isn't finished," Giovanni said finally, though genuine defeat was evident beneath his attempted defiance as he lowered his weapon slowly. Antonio moved immediately once the immediate danger had passed, rushing to Rosa's side and carefully working to release her from her restraints. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, genuine concern evident in his careful examination. "I'm okay," Rosa said, though her voice carried obvious exhaustion and lingering fear. Frightened, but genuinely unharmed, Antonio pulled her gently into his arms, genuine relief flooding through his chest as he held her close. "I was so terrified I might lose you," he admitted, genuine vulnerability evident in his voice. "I never doubted you would come for me," Rosa said softly, genuine trust evident despite her obvious exhaustion, as Antonio's security team properly secured Giovanni and his remaining forces, ensuring comprehensive consequences for this dangerous, unauthorized aggression against Antonio's territory and personal safety. Antonio remained close beside Rosa, genuine protective determination evident in his expression. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly, genuine sincerity evident in his careful words. "Tonight has shown me clearly exactly how much you mean to me. I won't allow anything or anyone to threaten your safety again." Rosa studied him carefully, genuine warmth evident in her exhausted expression despite everything she'd endured. "I trust you completely, Antonio," she said sincerely. Tonight has only strengthened that trust, rather than diminishing it. As they finally departed the facility together, Antonio's arm protectively wrapped around Rosa's shoulders. Both processed the genuine relief of surviving this dangerous ordeal. Their bond considerably strengthened rather than weakened by the frightening circumstances they had just endured together. In the weeks following the dangerous confrontation with Giovanni Bellini, life gradually settled into peaceful, grateful rhythm within Antonio's estate. Giovanni faced serious consequences within the city's careful criminal power structure. His organization considerably weakened by his reckless, unsuccessful attempt against Antonio's territory and personal safety. With the immediate danger having passed completely, Antonio found himself reflecting seriously on everything Rosa had brought into his previously guarded, isolated existence. Not simply romantic happiness, though that mattered considerably, but genuine healing regarding grief he'd carried unprocessed for 8 difficult years. He arranged a special evening, requesting Rosa prepare his mother's cherished recipe once more, though this time for a considerably more significant occasion than either their earlier painful encounter or their meaningful healing afternoon together weeks before. "You seem nervous tonight," Rosa observed, genuine curiosity evident in her warm expression as she noticed Antonio's uncharacteristic tension while she prepared their meal together in the kitchen. "Perhaps I am," Antonio admitted, genuine vulnerability evident beneath his careful composure, though for genuinely wonderful reasons, rather than anything troubling. As they finished preparing the meaningful dish together, working in comfortable, practiced harmony that had become genuinely familiar throughout their weeks of deepening connection, Antonio guided Rosa toward the estate's private garden, where he had arranged a simple, intimate table setting beneath the evening stars. "This is beautiful," Rosa said softly, genuine appreciation evident in her warm expression as she took in the carefully arranged, romantic setting. "I wanted tonight to feel genuinely significant," Antonio explained, guiding her toward her seat with careful attention. "Given everything we've shared together these past months, beginning with such painful circumstances, yet somehow leading toward genuine, a meaningful happiness. As they shared their meal together, genuine warmth and connection evident throughout their comfortable conversation. Antonio finally found the courage to properly express everything he'd been carefully considering throughout recent days. "Rosa," he said, genuine seriousness evident in his careful tone, "these past months have shown me something I hadn't properly believed myself capable of experiencing again after my mother's passing. Genuine happiness, authentic connection, the kind of healing I'd spent 8 years avoiding entirely. You've shown me something equally meaningful," Rosa replied softly, genuine sincerity evident in her warm response. Antonio reached into his jacket pocket, genuine emotion evident as he withdrew a small velvet box, carefully opening it to reveal a beautiful, elegant ring inside. "I want to properly honor both my mother's memory and the genuine love I've discovered with you," he said, his voice carrying genuine vulnerability despite his usual controlled composure. "Rosa Delgado, would you do me the profound honor of becoming my wife?" Genuine tears welled in Rosa's eyes as she processed this heartfelt, meaningful proposal. "Yes," she said immediately, genuine joy evident in her radiant smile. "Absolutely yes, Antonio." As Antonio slipped the ring gently onto her finger, genuine happiness flooding through both of them, despite the challenging circumstances that had tested their relationship so severely just weeks earlier. He found himself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this joyful moment. "Do you remember?" he said softly, genuine warmth evident in his tender expression. "How thoroughly I mishandled that very first evening, when you prepared this same recipe as a thoughtful surprise." Rosa laughed warmly, genuine happiness evident in her joyful expression. "I remember being genuinely devastated," she admitted, certain I'd completely ruined any possibility of continuing our working relationship, let alone discovering something considerably more meaningful. "Instead," Antonio said, genuine tenderness evident in his voice, "that painful moment ultimately led toward genuine healing I'd avoided for 8 difficult years, and toward discovering love I hadn't properly believed myself capable of experiencing again. I suppose we should genuinely thank that difficult first evening," Rosa said, genuine laughter evident in her voice, "for eventually bringing us together so meaningfully, despite its painful beginning." 6 months later, Antonio and Rosa's wedding took place in a beautiful, intimate ceremony surrounded by close family and trusted friends. Both organizations' complicated criminal politics carefully set aside for this genuinely joyful celebration of their hard-won, authentic love. Antonio's aunt, Elena Marchetti, watched with genuine tears of happiness as her nephew exchanged vows with the woman who had finally helped him properly process years of unaddressed grief. "Maria would be so genuinely proud," she whispered to Marco, who stood nearby, genuine warmth evident in his own expression. "Love has a way of healing wounds we didn't even realize we were still carrying," Marco observed quietly, watching Antonio's radiant expression as he gazed at Rosa throughout their heartfelt ceremony. As part of their wedding celebration, Rosa had prepared Maria's cherished recipe once more, this time as the evening's centerpiece dish, properly honoring both the woman who had first taught Antonio genuine love and the healing journey that had ultimately brought him toward discovering that same profound connection once again. "Your mother would have genuinely loved you," Antonio's aunt told Rosa warmly during the celebration. "Her recipe has always represented genuine love and family connection throughout our history. You've honored that meaning beautifully, both through preparing it so carefully and through the genuine love you've brought into Antonio's life." As Antonio and Rosa shared their first dance as husband and wife, both radiating genuine, unrestrained happiness despite the considerable challenges they'd overcome together, Antonio found himself understanding clearly that sometimes the most meaningful connections begin through the most unexpected, painful circumstances. "I love you completely," he whispered softly, holding her close as they moved together through their gentle first dance. "Not simply for the happiness you've brought into my life, but for the genuine healing you've helped me discover regarding grief I'd carried alone for far too long." "I love you as well," Rosa replied warmly, genuine sincerity evident in her tender words, "for showing me that even the most painful beginnings can lead toward genuine lasting happiness when both people remain willing to properly extend grace and understanding toward each other." As their wedding celebration continued joyfully around them, both Antonio and Rosa understood clearly that their unconventional journey, beginning with an explosive, painful misunderstanding, had ultimately proven that true healing often arrives through genuine vulnerability, patient understanding, and the courage to properly confront rather than avoid our most difficult, unprocessed grief. Sometimes they both understood now, watching each other with genuine, unwavering love beneath the peaceful evening sky. The most meaningful recipes for genuine happiness require not just careful technique, but authentic vulnerability, patient healing, and the willingness to properly share our most precious, painful memories with someone genuinely worthy of such profound trust.